All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of This Week in the Bush League, hosted by the Chief and the Champ. I'm the Chief, owner of the Bantam Roosters, and I'm pretty sure I struck out 15 people in a six-inning wiffle ball game at one point.
And I am the champ, and on our 2018 Bush League trip to Seattle, we saw a walk-off balk.
Wait, you saw a walk-off balk?
A walk-off balk. Yes, it was. I think it was either ninth or 10th inning, and the pitcher, because I had to look this up on Baseball Reference, it was Dylan Florio of the Dodgers, and it was a walk-off balk. And I remember looking over at Sam and saying, I've never seen a walk-off balk before in my life.
Yeah, it almost.
Look that up.
It almost feels like the umpire was like, "I got to get out of here. That guy makes one move. I'm calling a balk."
Surprisingly enough, Rod, surprisingly, there was over 40,000 people that night. This is a Seattle team in August in 2018, so they weren't competing for anything. My sense was that there's probably a lot of Dodger fans.
Yeah,
they probably travel pretty well.
Yeah, that's probably what I was. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Memorial Day, you got any big quarantine plans?
No, I just gonna throw some burgers on the grill. Pretty much different from any kind of Memorial Day in the past. What should have been is we should have been coming back from Seattle on our Alaskan cruise today. So, kind of a different world than we expected. What about you? What's going on with your world?
One of my nephews is over now, and I'm watching those guys play cornhole outside. So,
from a distance, are you any good?
The cornhole? No.
I would imagine you're pretty good. You got the hand and eye coordination.
I think I'm pretty good at horseshoes when I'm consistently play. Cornhole, I just don't get the sandbag through the whole thing.
Okay.
But hey, so I finished watching that Michael Jordan Last Dance thing. Did you watch the last of it?
I did. I watched the last two episodes.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
Are you confident as he is in anything? Like when you watch those 10 episodes, there would be a switch that he would seemingly turn on and be able to win when he wanted to win. Do you do anything where you feel like you're that confident?
So, my Bush League bravado says that I am, right? And I always come into the Bush League draft like I'm going to win the thing. But let's be realistic. In a simulation baseball game, like out-of-the-park baseball,
yeah,
I can't even make a trade in simulation baseball without asking you. So, no, I don't. I'm not even close to having that kind of bravado, which is probably the reason why, I was a mid-level high school player. So.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I don't know. The only thing when I was thinking of you, I was thinking that you probably are closest to have that type of thought process, that framework of how you approach the Bush League draft. I think you're kind of like that. I think there is a switch for you. Like if you don't win for a while, I think a switch kicks on. I think.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, I think for me, I think if I was pitching against anyone in wiffle ball, I feel like I could get him out.
Well, you've heard Tom talk about that, right? He just said he talked about you, and he said you just have this certain air about you, and you do have you exude this kind of aura that you're very confident, whether it be right or wrong.
Yeah, that's about the only thing. I don't know if that was the only thing in my life that I feel that confident.
You made a really good point, Raj, because when things are going your way, you think you can do no wrong. You've played sports long enough, and, playing over at Norchester, Tom will tell you this, that year that we had there, I felt pretty much like, hey, I can kind of put this team on my back and do pretty well. And you just get into that because, you're used to that success, but, you get hit hard a couple of times, you fumble, you do something, you make an error, whatever it might be, you strike out a couple of times back to back, and that confidence goes away. And to your point, Michael Jordan never seems to have lost that. And obviously, the mental aspect of that, he was just different from any other athlete, right?
Yeah. I mean, even LeBron might have more physical ability, but as far as mentally how he approached his job, watching that was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. And looking back,
it was really good.
yeah, looking back, I think he should have won the MVP every year. Like, there's no one more valuable than him on any team. Yeah.
Well, think about what he did for the NBA. Bill and I were talking about this. You know, Magic and Bird kind of brought the NBA back from where it was in the 70s. You know, and they kind of brought it back. But you know, Michael Jordan made it really popular, and good for David Stern for recognizing that and kind of embracing that. And you know, the NBA does a really good job marketing its stars. Now, obviously, a much different game than baseball and football, where you can kind of do that. You can see the players, but baseball doesn't do a great job at marketing its players compared to the NBA.
Yeah, and it is a little easier in the NBA because one person can control a game. I mean, a pitcher can control a game for the most part if they're pitching really well, but that's once every 5 days. But yeah, and the NBA does a good job. Baseball hasn't probably done a real good job since, you know, probably since Jordan and Bird and Magic, since they came on board, because the NBA just overtook that sport.
Well, speaking of baseball and The Last Dance, I think ESPN is going to run, and I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, but they're going to talk about, was it the 1998 season with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa in that race.
Yeah, I remember that. That was kind of exciting at the time. And then looking back, you're like, all right, well, it was all fake because they were all jacked up. But it was pretty exciting to watch when that was going on.
Well, at least that's where baseball got smarter, right? Instead of juicing the athletes, they've juiced the balls. So, you know, it's a little bit less harmful.
All right, so we have this is our first return guest, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have Bill Saldong, owner of the Statman, back on with us for the Memorial Day edition. Bill, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Raj. Thanks for having me back on as a repeat guest. First one. It's a privilege and an honor.
So let me ask you, you heard our conversation about Jordan and feeling confident that you could get anything accomplished that you wanted, any task that you wanted to get done. When you played basketball, you were a pretty good shooter. Did you ever get in that rhythm? Did you ever feel like, I can't miss today?
No, I was never talented enough. I could shoot, but I never felt like I would not miss. No, in fact, I was just thankful if it would go in.
What about if
can I
get?
Can I interrupt here? Because one of the things I kind of forgot, Raj, you know, you and I talked about our favorite trip, and that was to Chicago. And while you're talking about shooting and you can't miss, you and Bill, there was a bar in Chicago that you and Bill took on two other people.
A girl.
A guy and his girlfriend in a foul shooting contest, right?
She could shoot.
Yeah, well, tell me what happened there.
I missed.
Confidence.
I missed and she didn't. Bill, that I don't remember how many in a row, but I felt like she was in a rhythm where she was not missing.
Bill?
Yeah, so here's my recollection. As Raj said, if you did a blood alcohol, right, I mean, it wasn't really a fair contest, and I think we were scammed a little bit. What I recall is everybody had to shoot 5 free throws. I think Raj and I each knocked down 4 out of 5, and I think both of them, the guy and the girl, hit 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
So we owed them a drink.
And
that wasn't fair.
Did you do the wall dunk too? Did you jump?
I did. I don't know if that was before or after. Could have been during for all I know.
Yeah, after you missed 2 in a row, just get up there and dunk it.
Yeah, in that cage.
Yeah, the cage. Yeah, she didn't get rattled, man. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you're right. Maybe at another time, and I had coffee in me instead of beer, I could have knocked out 5 out of 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let me ask you something else, too, because we're talking a little bit about your high school baseball career. What about, did you feel there was anybody that could throw you out? Any catcher that you played against that you were kind of concerned that could throw you out, or do you feel like you could steal against anyone?
So there, I can't remember his name. There was definitely a Boyertown catcher, because Boyertown was almost like a minor league kind of franchise, even in high school and Legion. And so between the way their pitchers could, hold runners and, they pitch from the stretch and have a short, maybe a slide step, and the way their catchers were trained to throw people out of it, that concerned me. I had trouble against them, but anybody else, I think I was always stealing on the pitcher. You know, it was almost like 3 seconds before they get rid of the ball. So it was relatively easy, right? But other than border town catcher or catchers, I don't think I had trouble stealing against anybody.
All right. So we're going to cover some things we probably didn't cover initially when we spoke with you. Just kind of give the listeners a little background. Growing up, where you live now, where you went to high school, college, things like that.
Sure. So I was born in the same small town. I guess it was not that small then, but in upstate New York, Elmira, same one where Jamie was born. And shortly after that, we moved to St. Louis, which is kind of why we're really big baseball fans. So right after I was born till like I was 4 years old, we were in St. Louis when they were good. I don't remember it, but I've always wanted to be a Cardinals fan since then. Spent one more year up in upstate Pennsylvania, near the border of New York, and then I've lived in Pottstown from the time I was in kindergarten till I went to college. And so I guess back in 1982, I went to college at Bucknell University, right? So that's about an hour east of Penn State. And then after I graduated, pretty much I went to work for NSA down in Maryland, and I've been down in the Maryland area, Baltimore area, since 1986.
Wow, 86, you moved down there.
Yeah, so I've almost been there for 34 years.
Holy smokes! Yeah, that's probably the longest place you've ever lived.
Yeah. I spent almost my 2/3 of my life almost down there.
Okay. So, Jamie set some of this up here. Went to Owen J. Roberts High School, graduated in 82, you said? 82?
That's correct.
So discuss some of the pranks you played in high school. Go ahead.
Do you want me to set some of this up a little bit here? So the crowd that Bill used to run with, they were all pretty smart. I think most of the friends that Bill had were all about 6'2" and over, and then there's Bill. But these guys were notorious for playing pranks on each other, members of the school staff, writing letters, that type of thing, to the Mercury, that type of thing. So I picked out asking him some of the harmless pranks. So, Bill, do you want to expand upon that?
So I have to be careful not to self-incriminate. So I've got to be, I'll say this is what I understood things to have happened. But the one you brought up, I think, James, and I'd almost forgotten about it, is when we do our cap and gown picture for graduation, there's a class picture, everybody stands there, or maybe seated, I don't remember. And so I guess I used to like to wear these fake nose and glasses, right, with a little cheesy mustache. And I remember when they were trying to say, everybody look up and smile. And so what I would do is I'd put my head down. I think someone would almost shield me. And they said just about when they were about to take the picture, they'd say now, and I'd pop my head up. And my senior class picture in cap and gown, for the whole class, actually has me in a fake nose and glasses. There was that one. Again, there's another alleged incident where for graduation, people that I knew may have hung a banner up on the press box. Remember how the press box at O&J was?
Yeah.
Where it was, and it kind of faced, like when we were doing graduation, it would face the stage for graduation. So allegedly, some of us may have climbed up onto the press box the night before, put this banner up, took a string down, and had somebody pull the banner down while we were walking in for graduation. They're playing whatever it is, Pomp and Circumstance or whatever. And there was a saying on there that was, I won't repeat it, but it was popularized by John Belushi in Animal House. And so it took, I think it was, it might have been Mr. Strohecker or somebody had to kind of climb up and rip it down off the press box.
Was anybody indicted on that?
Indicted? No.
That reminds me of the old line in Stripes, right, with Bill Murray, when they ask him, have you ever been convicted of a crime, before they're trying to get into the Army?
Right.
And Bill Murray says, convicted? No, I'm never convicted.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the banner from Pottstown?
Okay, so this one I can talk about because there were plans for me to go along with that. And actually, this was my senior year. and I got hurt in a basketball game the night before. I actually tore ligaments in my right ankle and was out the whole season. So I wasn't able to go, but there were a group of my friends who were able to drive over to Pottstown. If you guys remember, they would hang a banner on a Pottstown High School that would say "Tame the Cats on Turkey Day."
Yeah.
And so they were able to cut down and steal the banner. And so that was kind of interesting. And then, there was a lot of, security about it the next year, and they were, it could never happen again. And it happened again the next year. my friends stole it, and what they did is they actually hung it on the back of the bleachers at O&J. So remember how you could drive up Route 100 there past 23 at Bucktown? You could look over and see the back of the bleachers.
Yeah.
They hung it there. So on Thanksgiving morning, the Tame the Cats on Turkey Day Pottstown banner was hanging off the O&J bleachers.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I remember that banner. Yeah, okay, very nice. So it's a shame you got
real
hurt.
life Animal House stuff.
I imagine when you got hurt and you realized that you had torn ligaments, what was the first thing that popped to your mind? I'm missing the rest of the season, or I can't go steal the banner.
It was the latter of the two. In fact, I thought, well, I can still drive the getaway car. But I couldn't because it was my right ankle. Right? So now I was sidelined.
Oh my
I had to wait
gosh,
for pictures.
that's funny, man. All right, so moving on to Bush League stuff. A couple weeks ago, we talked to Jamie about his fine recruits, of additions to the league. One of the guys that you recruited, I'm assuming you recruited, is Mike Alexander, owner of the Tyconians and Warthogs. Is that true? Did you recruit him?
Yeah, and in fact, it's kind of unfortunate that you have me instead of Mike on this week because Mike, when you get him, he's gonna be great. As you guys know, he's a good guy. He's a loyal friend, and he's a really good storyteller. So Mike and I have been friends pretty much. We actually went and did communion and confirmation together at St. Thomas More Catholic Church, and then I really got to know him in like 8th grade. So since 8th grade, we've been best of friends. And then we kept in touch after college, and he had heard about the Bush League, right? He knew a lot of you guys. He played baseball with you, Raj, I'm sure, and Bob, and he knew Jamie and Tom. And so he understood the Bush League, and I know he would come to some of our wiffle ball outings even before we got into the league. And we eventually enticed him enough, and I encouraged him to join the league so he could go on trips and play wiffle ball and just be part of the league. So yeah. It's like, I recruited him in there as a friend, and I thought he was a pretty good Bush League member for the time he was there.
Yeah, he was. He's a good guy. And how I knew Mike was I wrestled with him. So when I was a sophomore, he was a senior. Yeah, that's how I was introduced to him. And he was a big help because I didn't wrestle before. I played basketball in junior high school, and I remember Howie Sage telling me, he goes, "You shouldn't play basketball. When you come to practice with me, I'll teach you how to be a wrestler." And I just said, okay. And Mike kind of helped develop me that first year. He was a good dude. He was a good mentor throughout my 3 years of being on that team.
Yeah.
So you played high school and Legion with him, American Legion, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Where did he get the nickname Schmitty?
Yeah. So growing up. He idolized Mike Schmidt for the Phillies, right? And if you see Mike Alexander, he wore his uniform like Mike Schmidt. He always wanted to be number 20, right? He did everything. I think even the way he just threw the baseball, and sometimes even batting, he would try to look like Mike Schmidt. And so I think 9th grade, I started calling him Schmitty instead of Mike, right? And so it stuck ever since then. And I still call him Schmitty to this day when I see him. And most people who know him from that time frame, we'll call him Schmitty.
That's funny. And your last year in the American Legion, you guys won the county title, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So, Rod, were you part of that team?
Well,
go back and look.
Yeah, Stan and I would come up every once in a while. We played Junior Legion, and we talked about that last week when Stan wore the Junior Legion uniform because to wiffle ball. We were 15, and we would come up and as depth. But you guys had a pretty good club.
Yeah, because I think I remember seeing some of the championship pictures there. But it was an interesting season. I really don't want to necessarily compare ourselves to like the 2004 Boston Red Sox, but we were like 500 halfway through the season, and somewhere along the line we just don't care, right? It's our senior year. We're just going to go out and have fun. We're not going to really be concerned about losing or how we're going to look. Let's just have fun. And then we started taking off. Right? Everybody on the lineup could hit. We weren't great fielding. We didn't have great pitching. We could kind of like hit the ball, not bludgeon it over the fence, but just enough hits. And I think we just started outscoring teams. And we won our division that year. What I do remember is we had playoffs, 2 rounds of playoffs. So we were in first place, and we played a second place division in the state, Southern Division. It was the best of 3 playoffs. And we lost the first game of the first series. So we had to come back, and win 2 to get to the finals. The same thing happened in the finals. We had lost the first game, had to come back and win 2 to win it. And as I recall, we hosted the last game, and Andy Bortz hit a walk-off. We won at the bottom of the 7th, I think, like 10-9. I think he actually hit a ground ball to second base. It took a bad hop and just eluded the second baseman, and it was a walk-off victory for the county championship.
Yeah, I always felt that was strange when Denny would bring us up because I felt like I was a good enough defender. Like I'm trying to remember the kid's name that played second base. Ray, is it Rick Ray?
Ricky Ray.
Yeah,
Ricky Ray.
I felt like I could pick the ball up, but I was too young to hit. And Stan would always joke like, I don't know why I'm going because I think Jeff Hunt was the shortstop.
Jeff Hunt was.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm not playing. I'm never gonna play. Like, yeah, I know, man.
Yeah.
We'll just show up.
Yeah, it was a fun group, and we just had a lot of fun, and it turned into success. So we kind of had the best of both worlds.
So, did you go on after that? Was there more playoffs after the county?
There were. Yes, there were. We went down and played in some kind of, probably was like a regional kind of championship or tournament. It wasn't good. We went down to close to Philadelphia and lost a couple of close games. Maybe one was a 1-run, other one maybe 2 or 3-run game, but double elimination, and we were done the first day. It was kind of not a satisfying ending, but that's what happened.
Okay, yeah. And then I remember that last. I don't know why we even played, or it was your team, and Stan and I played with you guys. We were in Boyertown for like a round robin tournament, but that was after everything was over, and I had no idea why they were even playing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Again, it's almost even worse thinking about that's the way my career kind of ended. But they were opening up that stadium, right? I don't know, Don Speck or whoever opened up that Boyertown Stadium, and they asked us to be part of it. It was almost like, like when a Division I basketball team will schedule, like a major school will schedule a tournament. They always pick a few pansies to beat up on. And we just happened to be that pansy to beat up on. And we were local. Like
when Duke invites Bucknell down.
Yeah, exactly. you want to win that first one, right? It was ugly. I remember how bad those games were.
Yeah, it was ugly.
We hadn't played in like 3 weeks. As I recall, we didn't play in like 3 weeks. None of us were in any kind of baseball shape.
Yeah, and and half the team didn't even want to play.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right, so your other connection with Mike, other than baseball and going to school with him, were the Three Stooges. So I have a question for you. Who do you think is the best Stooge?
Yeah, so these are good questions, and thanks for asking. I hope there are other Three Stooges fans out there, but if not, that's okay. It's always a good conversation we have. Shemp is by far the best Stooge. He improvises well. He's just funny on his own. The stuff he does without even speaking is just hysterical.
Yeah, and the hair. How he flips the hair. Yeah.
Yeah, my hair was starting to look like that until I finally got it cut last week. It had been a long time for me as a haircut, so I was getting that Shemp look.
And then what do you think the best episode is?
So there's so many, because there's different scenes in each one, but there was one where they impersonated being plumbers. I think the episode was called "A Plumbing We Will Go," and of course they ended up hooking the plumbing up to the electric, and so water streaming through where electricity should be flowing, and there are some really funny stuff in there, some politically incorrect stuff going on in there. And it was just a really, really good episode.
Actually, I used a line the other day, and it's funny how when I use a line from the Stooges, no one in my household or in my sphere of influence actually understands any of it. And I don't know how it came up, but I did the. Do you see the deer? Does a deer have any dough? Yeah, about $3. You remember when he
Yeah.
and he whacks him in the head? Yeah, I said that,
He
and
whacks him. Yep.
yeah, no one understood it, and I was just like, yeah, never mind. And but I think that's one of the funniest lines where yeah, that's when Larry like peeks his head in and goes, yeah, about $3, and then boom, whacks him right in the forehead. Yeah. So with a 2-year-old in the house temporarily, we do not watch the Three Stooges because I don't want him learning how to hit people. Okay, so hey, Bill, we are going to talk about some summer jobs, and when we get to you, please chime in because I read yours, and that seemed like a nightmare. Jamie, you want to get it from here?
Yeah, yes. So part of the reason I had asked those questions about the Three Stooges, you know, Bill and Schmitty were always good, and Schmitty can do some great Stooges impersonation. But this all kind of ties together with our trip to St. Louis. As you know, as everybody heard last week, you know, both Bob, or Harold and Kumar, if you will, walking through the White Castle. We went over to Mike and Mary's when they were living in St. Louis. And, you know, we had a fair amount to drink before we got there. Well, Schmitty asked Stan to do some plumbing work. So Stan is underneath the sink, and he's had a lot of beer to drink. And, you know, I'll let Schmitty tell the story next week. But it was our own version of a plumbing we will go. So that was kind of a setup, a prelude. So, you know, listeners, stay tuned next week for the ending of this episode. But moving to the summer jobs, you know, one of the things we had talked about, Raj, is that, you know, we didn't expect to be at Memorial Day and not talking about, you know, the Bush League and the season. You know, COVID-19 was the farthest thing from our mind when we first started this podcast back in February. So we were kind of digging deep to say, hey, what kind of topics can we, you know, delve a little bit deeper in and talk to the owners about? And one of the things that we came up with was, you know, some of our summer jobs that we had. There used to be a show, and I can't remember what channel it was on. It was called Dirty Jobs, and
Yeah.
I had asked all the owners, hey, text me what your, you know, worst summer job was. And we got, you know, 8 out of the 10 owners responding. We got some really good responses. So I'm actually going to start with Bill. And Bill, if you could tell us, you know, what was your worst summer job?
Okay, yeah. So back in the summer of 1985, it was right before my senior year. I was actually taking a couple of classes down at Westchester because I was going to graduate early, right, from college. So I was kind of doubling up on some classes. And so it was difficult to get a job, you know, even if it's a part-time job. It's kind of hard to find much of anything. But they wanted you there at certain times, and they conflicted with some of the classes I was taking. So I ended up working for about 2.5 months at Arby's as a cook. You know, I could fry, I could cook some hamburgers. I was a really good slicer, right? I could make those roast beef sandwiches. But man, that job was horrible, right? I feel like I was like one of the old people there because I was 21, and there's a lot of 16 or 18-year-olds, right? And they think it's a great job. I think it sucked. I had these brown polyester pants and polyester shirts that smelled like grease, right? I washed it maybe once a week, and it was just not a good job. And the recollection I have is working on the 4th of July, and you made whatever you made, right? There was no sense of holiday or bonus pay or whatever. At the time, back in '85, minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. So here I am flipping burgers and cutting roast beef for $3.35 an hour on 4th of July, and I thought to myself, never again. I'm getting my degree, and I'm never working back at fast food again.
So those brown uniforms, were they kind of a mix between a UPS driver and the old San Diego Padres?
Yeah, that was like the color and the feel, and there was not a stitch of natural fabric in them, right? They were just gruesome.
What kind of hat did you have to wear? Was it like a baseball cap?
No, you know, I don't remember getting a baseball hat. I think we had like those paper kind of paper hats that we'd wear new every day with the little Arby's logo on. You know, I'm talking about the kind of paper and
Yeah.
disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd stand back there, and of course my friends would come in and razz me from the other side of the counter just to order, they ordering food and stuff. But yeah, not good. Not
So-
a good thing. Although I think everybody needs to work fast food at least once in their life to kind of give them some motivation to kind of do something better.
Can you give us the skinny on the horsey sauce? Do you know what that's really made out of?
I don't. I just know that I would have to go back in the refrigerator. They had them look like these gallon vats that dump it out, take these big spoons and dump it in. Oh yeah. It took me about 3 years to eat at Arby's again.
So Bill, here's what you can do, because we had Stan on last week. You can one-up Stan. If you can appear at the draft in your old Arby's uniform,
yeah.
you would beat Stan in the
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You tell me any player you don't like. Whatever player you want, you could have if you wore that at any price,
See,
man.
Raj, that's the problem with you. These are the kind of deals that you'll make just for the heck of it.
Oh yeah, but we have to have video.
Holy God. Oh, my God. We are getting so far off topic now. Oh, I don't know if I can read this. I got to have a professional reader in here. That's just the thought of you coming in with the hat. You got to do it with the hat, okay? Not just the brown uniform, with the hat.
Yeah, so
That
of
would be
course,
great.
for Stan, there was probably some incentive to want to keep that uniform. For me, I couldn't turn that thing in fast enough. I think I just took it off the last day I worked, got in the bathroom, took it off, and left it in there and said, I'm done.
So
Yeah.
also, unlike Stan, you actually turned yours in.
Right.
Probably
right,
a
and
deposit on ours.
Yeah, enough Stan bashing. I have to get back to him, back at him for calling me beady-eyed. But anyway, summer jobs. Here we go. Josh. Josh is a good guy. He's funny. But here's what he writes. I didn't necessarily hate the job, but I used to put up fence during the summer. Basically, a labor bitch.
So
Bob Freeze. Go ahead.
hold on. When I read that, I recently saw a little video clip of Allen Iverson, because all these basketball players are chiming in on the Jordan thing. And
Right.
Iverson talked about the first time he met Jordan was at the All-Star game, and he was sitting in the locker room, and that's when Jordan walked by him and said, "What's up, you little bitch?" and walked by. And Case and I were laughing, thinking that's the one guy you don't say anything like that to, Iverson, because all these guys pretend like they're thugs, and I kind of believe Iverson maybe was one, and I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
My. Yeah, no, that was good. That's good. All right, Bob Freeze. Here's what he wrote. A lot of people would say that my worst job was pumping septic tanks, cesspools, and outhouses for 3.5 summers. But it was with my grandfather and worth every minute of it. I did spend one day shoveling stones in a wheelbarrow by myself and dumping them into a cellar, and never went back. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least in the Bush League, he's finally gotten out of the cellar. So.
Well, yeah, that shoveling stones into a wheelbarrow does not sound fun, man. I don't.
No.
Yeah, I don't know if I would even have done that. I think I would just said, "That's what I have to do." All right, man. I got to get out of here.
Hey, you know what? Bob's a good guy. He at least he finished the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Casey wrote in and he said his worst summer job was working at an Amish restaurant buffet as a dishwasher.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
I do. I remember I used to have to go pick him up, and we were talking about it, and he said, "You know what? I don't even remember you saying that I needed to get a job." I think he was 15. But he said all my friends worked there, so he thought, I'll just go work there. And he said after he started the first day, he felt like he ruined his life. Like, why am I doing this? So he stuck it out I think he stuck it out till basketball started, and then he said, "Hey, I got practice. Do you mind if I not do this job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't want you to get a job, but yeah." So that was it was kind of crappy. He washed pots and pans.
I got to be honest with you. I don't think there's any worse of a restaurant to be a dishwasher than in an Amish restaurant, because I just all the grease. all that Pennsylvania
yeah.
Dutch cooking with all the grease. Lard. Ugh, really bad. All right, so Tom wrote in. Here's Tom, so I'm going to read it verbatim here. He goes, I baled hay with Kent High and Steve Brower. I had no gloves, no water. Kent would throw 2 bales at a time at me to stack. By the end, I could barely lift one. If he's still alive, he's probably still laughing at me. I manned up and lasted the day, but my hands were such a mess, I could not go back to work the next day and never went back. He goes, I think Kent eventually paid me $20. I now think and type for a living and only suffer the occasional paper cut on my hands.
I can't see Tom baling hay, to be honest with you.
Well, you know where that farm was, right? That was right down there, right on the border of North Coventry and South Coventry, on Harmonyville Road. You could see High's farm from Route 100 also. It was the dairy farm that's no longer,
all right.
So it was right there.
Bill,
And,
hey, Bill, Steve Brower, did he play on that team as well? Did he play on your Legion team?
No, he played on it the year before when I was a junior, but he did not play on it my senior year.
Yeah, the names sound familiar. I just didn't know if I knew him or not. All right.
So and Pop Kirk wrote in and said, "Worst summer job: power sanding rust off the inside of a large, smelly dumpster with not a lot of air circulation. $10 under the table, which was big. $10 an hour under the table was big money back then. Which do you know where he did that?
It was somewhere in Boyertown. I don't know how he got the job. It was we were in school. We were in college. So it must have been a summer either before we left for school or our first summer back from college. But yeah, he didn't go out during the week. You call him, he's like, yeah, I'm not going out. I forgot about that job because he worked at the Acme too, and that seemed like as a cashier. That seemed like a bad job too. But yeah, I remember this after I read it, and yeah, I think that job was brutal. Yeah.
What about you, Raj? What about you? What was your worst summer job?
So I actually did it 2 summers. I worked at Gross Buses in Boyertown, Ole. I think it was on Route 100 north of Boyertown.
Okay.
So I cleaned school buses for the summer, and it was brutal. Literally, I worked with John Dury, and Andy Borch worked with me one year. So my job was to wax the floor. So I'm trying to build a picture for you. Take an old coffee can with liquid wax in it and a rag, and I would have to lay on the bench seating and wax every inch of that floor in the summer. So we used to have the back door open, and it smelled. I probably was affected by that. Like, I should have been wearing a mask, like a ventilation mask, but no one ever offered it to me, and I was 16 and I never thought to think of it. Yeah, that was probably the worst job. And like Bill, I probably made $3.35 an hour, but it was good because I worked 7 to 2:30 and I could make all my games. So that's why I took the job. Yeah. Yeah. It was
nothing like waxing a bus floor, right? So the kids can kind of slide around on the bus if it wasn't slippery enough, right?
You talk about paint
belts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Like, there's a term in the military when you have inspections, like you paint the grass, right? So it looks good. That's what waxing that floor did. It just looked shiny. Yeah, there was nothing new about it. It was still the same old floor. It just looked good.
So Rod, you're talking about a respirator. My worst job, other than I first started as a dishwasher, if you guys remember, over at the Tea Room, Coventry Tea Room, right near 23 and 100.
Yeah, that's pretty upscale for you.
Well, I did that for a summer, and I was like the last person in there. They would close probably at like 10 o'clock at night, and I would close up because, they had all the dishes. I would come in after they started serving, and then there's a big pile of dishes, which is why I hate to do it these days. But I remember I would bring in a radio, listen to the Phillies game, and, at 9, 10 o'clock at night, you're getting pretty hungry, right? You're young kids at 16, 17 years old. You see the food coming in back off the plates. What do?
No.
You don't throw it away, you eat it.
No.
Yeah, I did. I used to eat it.
Well,
but that wasn't the worst job.
Okay, go ahead.
The summer of between my freshman and sophomore year in college, I worked over at Firestone, and Firestone had closed at that time. Was actually working for Mayor Pollock, reclaiming steel. So I got the job. I worked with Todd Kraptowski and John Troyan. And what we would do is we would actually go into the old Firestone plant and clear out the carbon black cells. So we used to come out looking like we were reclaiming steel. You'd come out looking like miners. And
gosh.
you could actually shower there with Ivory dishwashing liquid at the showers there, and then I would come home afterwards and shower again. It was that bad.
So-
I used to come in, Raj, with grease. I was covered with grease, and one of our jobs was, because we were the lackeys there, we were actually scraping asbestos off of machines
Oh,
with
my
those
gosh.
little paper masks. Yeah. Now, that was, like Bob talked about, it was good money back then. You know, I think I got paid like $7.40 an hour. So I made a couple thousand. Well, yeah, I made a couple $1,000s that summer. It was actually enough to pay for one semester at LaSalle. So yeah, that was. But you know, to this day, whenever I start coughing and see ads for what's it called, mesothelioma,
Yeah.
I think yeah, I'm like yeah, I kind of worry about that. But yeah, it was disgusting. And one day, one more story is we used to leave our clothes there. You used to buy uniforms, rent uniforms, if you will, and there was a locker room in there. And the one day, putting on my boot, and like, what the hell? You know, you kind of wiggle your foot around. You know, it doesn't feel right. Took my foot out. I'm like, oh, my sock's fine. Let me try it again. Put my foot back in there. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I bang my boot down, and a big cockroach about 6 inches crawls out of my boot. And I screamed like a girl, and everybody in there thought that was so funny. So to this day, whenever I wear boots, I actually bang them out first. You could probably talk about that being in the military, right? And being over
Yeah.
in Iraq.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a couple things to that story that I just have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you guys use a canary at any time while you're in that mill? Did you?
Yeah, the canary died before they sent us down there.
No? Okay. The other thing that stuck out to me was $2,000 a semester. Now think about that. You've paid for kids to go
Yeah.
to school. I've paid for kids to go to school. $2,000 a semester. It seems like a dream.
So this is a little bit of social commentary, right? 'Cause, you know, you hear people my age and people older say, well, you know, telling kids that, yeah, I paid for my own college. There is no way that kids can pay for
Yeah,
college
no
over
way.
summer now. It's
Yeah.
just too expensive, and it hasn't. You know, the cost of college has far outpaced earnings potential. But that's, you know, another political discussion for another day.
And then the other thing I picked up on, mesothelioma commercial, yeah, you were definitely retired because they only show those during the day. So,
Well, you know, I only catch it in between because I fast forward in between the commercials of Price is Right. Because I do watch the Price is Right. So
they're the type of commercials that you would see during summer when I was watching McHale's Navy. I would see mesothelioma commercials. And then
I catch him midday, Raj. You probably catch him late at night at 1 or 2 in the morning.
and then cockroach. I lived in Mississippi for a while. They're called palmetto bugs. They're not down in Mississippi. They call them palmetto bugs. They're still cockroaches. They just got a nicer name. I don't know why they.
Well, yeah, they always try and sweeten things up a little bit in the South. So
Of course, down there they could eat them. I don't know. Yeah, so that seems like it's a bad job. But again, when you're talking about, like Bob talking about making $10 an hour under the table in 1984 or 85, that's a huge number. That's huge. Like Bill and I are making $335, and there's taxes coming out.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? And I want to thank everybody for participating in this, because when I read through this, I was laughing so hard at some of these jobs. But kind of what it reflects upon, Raj, is that we all kind of came up kind of the same way, in that, you know, everybody has jobs that they didn't like. And, you know, if we look back then where we were and our stations in life now, you know, to a person, we've all done pretty well. So, you know, pretty happy and pretty thankful for that.
Yeah, one of the guys that didn't send you anything is the guy still in high school. right?
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe, for him, maybe for Sam, this is, this is a look into Christmas future for him. So beware, Sam. Sorry about that. So
Yes.
Rod, let's take this in a little bit different direction. And I want to thank Christy because she gave us some ideas. Your wife gave us some ideas. As we kind of spend this holiday, we all too often forget the reason for this holiday, which is, in memory of a lot of the veterans that have given their life for this country. And you've done some research. You want to talk about what Christy had mentioned to us and what you've put together here?
Yeah, so when I was telling her, she always asks, who do we have on this week? What are our topics? And I said, we got a guy, we got him penciled in that used to be an owner. He'll be a good interview, but we're struggling to pin him down. And she looked at me, she's like, well, why don't you do a Memorial Day and talk about the players who, served in the military? And I was like, man, that is a great idea. And I fired that text off to you. You came right back saying, yeah, let's do it. And I really it was really eye-opening doing the research behind this. And there's a lot of connections with the military in the Bush League. I mean, Rick and I are retired. Your brother-in-law is retired Army. Though Bill's not in the military, his job is to try to figure out bad guys and send them to the military, and the military trying to knock them out. So, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of there is a lot of military connections within the Bush League, which is good. So from my research, what I did was I did find that there are over 500 major league players who served in the military, either in the reserves or active service, and another 2,000 minor league players.
Wow.
Yeah, most of whom served in World War II. Many served in Korea. More than I realized served in Vietnam, and not as many served in the Gulf Wars or the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. But I just had some notable players, and then I wanted to touch on two most notable that I think have interesting stories. So, some of the notable players are from World War II is Bob Feller. And I found this in two sources that it's reported that he joined the Navy one day after the Pearl Harbor attack. Now, Bob Feller was in his early 20s, and he was making $100,000 for his contract, which that's a pretty big deal. And he served 2 years on the USS Alabama in the Pacific. And just as a note, so Bob Feller served from 42 to 44.
Wow.
When he came back late in 45. He appeared in 9 games in 1945. 1946 was his first full season back. He was 27 years old. He led the American League in wins with 26. So, and he led the American League with innings pitched, and he had a pretty good comeback job. The other ones that notable in World War II are Warren Spahn and Hoyt Wilhelm, both whom are Hall of Famers. Both were drafted by the Army, and they both saw combat in the Battle of the Bulge, which was a huge battle in Europe. A lot of servicemen lost their lives. Wilhelm was actually awarded a Purple Heart, which was a pretty big deal. And these guys served. They were drafted in their early 20s, and a lot of them had already big league experience, were well on their way to great careers, and to be halted like that is tough. But in all the reports, they went and they had no problem seeing combat, because a lot of the World War II guys used to play baseball. Like Joe DiMaggio played baseball. He didn't really serve. Yeah, he didn't serve in combat. I think Billy Martin played baseball, and Willie Mays. So they would do like morale tours. There's quite a few in Vietnam. Remember Jim Bibby?
I do. Big guy, right?
Yeah.
His brother played for the Sixers.
Yeah, Henry Bibby.
Henry Bibby played for the Sixers, yeah.
So when I read about Jim Bibby, he came up with the Rangers. Now, he served in Vietnam before he hit the big leagues. But Whitey Herzog compared him to Nolan Ryan.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't want to trade him. But, of course, that Herzog thing that he didn't get along with that owner, and the guy traded Jim Bibby and Bill Madlock and then fired Herzog. And then the Rangers were horrible for 25 years. Al Bunbury served in combat in Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay.
Gary Maddox, the Giants and Philly center fielder, Secretary of Defense. And I found this in two sources too. It was reported that Maddox suffered from chemical burns while in Vietnam on his face, and that's why he had the beard, because it was too sensitive to shave. Ed Figueroa, remember Ed Figueroa?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
And then Carlos May. So Carlos May is a brother of Lee May, who played on those early Reds teams. Carlos was in the Marine Corps and blew off half his right thumb in a mortar accident at Camp Pendleton. So he got he got discharged and rehabbed it. Went back with the White Sox, and 3 years later he hit .302. So
how do you grip a bat, Raj, with half a thumb?
I know, and he would tape it up, and he was right-handed, so it was his top hand. So I guess if you're going to hit, it's best to have your top hand injured rather than your bottom hand. Yeah, he must have been a heck of a player to play in the big leagues with half a thumb blown off. Yeah, so I was a little surprised how many Vietnam vets Major League Baseball had. And then the two most notables are, I had Ted Williams. Ted Williams had two service tours, 1943 to 1945, and then 52 to 53. So he served in World War II and Korea. He was a Marine Corps pilot. World War II doesn't seem like he had any combat hours, but he was probably flying every day. And he was in Hawaii for most of the time, so it reported that he played baseball every once in a while, but he had sorties or training flights to fly as well. In the Korean War, he flew 39 combat missions and got a Marine Corps Air Medal. You fly 39 combat missions, that's a lot. Like that's, you're putting yourself at risk there.
Yeah.
So this is what I found interesting. So his first tour in World War II, it's 43 to 45. So he was out 3 years. He comes back in 46. He's 27 years old. Hit .342. So he led the league in runs, walks, on base percentage, and slugging percentage, and won the MVP.
So he was away 3 years and came back and won the MVP.
Yeah, it hit .342.
Oh,
and then he goes away again in 52 and 53. In 54, he comes back. Jamie, he's 35 years old at this point. So he comes back after missing basically 2 years. He comes back and hits .345 and led the American League in on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS.
That's ridiculous. I guess that just speaks to just how talented he was and just how great a hitter he was.
Yeah, and that's why I always laugh when, in that era, so the era that he played in, you're looking at DiMaggio and Stan Musial, right? In that 40s, 50s, 60s era.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, DiMaggio gets way too much credit over Musial and Ted Williams. Because Stan Musial he had military service for 1 year in 1945, and the year he came back, he won the MVP, and he hit .365. Now, yeah, and Musial is one of the best. I mean, he's not Ted Williams, but he's right there. He's probably, him and Gwynn and Ted Williams are probably the best left-handed hitters baseball's ever seen. And I don't think Musial gets the credit that he probably should. I mean, there's times Ted Williams won the Triple Crown, he didn't even win the MVP. So, that's that Yankee era, I guess.
Well, and Ted Williams was a little bit prickly, right, toward the press. And so there was a lot of bias against Ted Williams because he really rubbed people the wrong way. And, he never tipped his cap to the fans, right? Because they were pretty hard on him in Boston. I don't think he ever did.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. But some of the things that he did, like the year he hit 400, he played a doubleheader. Like he could have just sat out. He was at 400.
Yeah.
He ended up getting 4 hits.
Yeah, didn't he go like 5 for 8 or something like that on the last day to move his average to 407?
Yeah. So that guy to serve basically 5 years out of his career, he definitely would have had 3,000 hits because he didn't. I don't think he really had 200 hits that many times, but he walked a lot. He would have 120 walks every year at least. And then the other guy, he's not a player, but I don't think he gets kind of the notoriety in baseball history that he should. Is Bill Veeck? You remember Bill Veeck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the owner.
Yeah. So he served in the Marine Corps during World War II while he was the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers, which was a minor league team at the time. He had his leg severely injured in combat, and he had his left leg amputated. So he had his left leg amputated in his 20s.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
He ended up being the owner of the Cleveland Indians, the St. Louis Browns, and the Chicago White Sox twice. While he's with the Indians, he signed Larry Doby and brought him up to the big leagues in July of 47. Now, Larry Doby doesn't get a lot of credit because it's always Jackie Robinson who broke the barrier in April 47. Larry Doby's the first American League player, African-American American League player in baseball. Veeck signed Satchel Paige in 1948, making him the oldest rookie in the history of baseball. I think he was in his 40s at the time. And then the Indians won the 48 World Series, which is the last time I think they won the World Series.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. He got divorced, had to sell his share of the team. He ended up buying the St. Louis Browns, which were pretty bad.
They were a bad team.
Yeah, but he was a good marketer because he's the one that brought in Eddie Goodell. You remember Eddie Goodell, the midget?
I do.
Yeah, so because there was no rule, so he brought him in, and of course that was the last time Eddie Goodell played, and then there was a rule. It was interesting too about he owned the Browns at the same time that the Cardinals owner got convicted of tax evasion, and he was trying to get the Browns pumped up. He bought Sportsman Park. He marketed it for the St. Louis Browns, and then what happened is the Cardinals were bought by Anheuser-Busch. And then he figured, all right, now that Bush owns the team, he's a St. Louis guy, I'm never going to be able to compete with that. And he had a deal worked out to move the team to Baltimore to become the Baltimore Orioles. And the owners kind of pinched him a little bit, and he was forced to sell his portion of the team. And they moved to Baltimore, became the Baltimore Orioles. And a lot of the times that Veeck got pinched by other owners is because he wanted to integrate much more quickly than other owners wanted to do that. I mean, the Dodgers basically moved to Los Angeles, and San Francisco did, and they integrated pretty easily. But the East Coast teams and the Midwest teams weren't so quick to integrate as the other teams. And then he owned the White Sox eventually. He had some really kind of crazy ideas. Do you remember Minnie Minoso?
I do.
He was a Cuban, I think. He played in 5 decades, so he would sign them like for 8-day contracts. I think 1980 was his last at bats. So Minnie Minoso played in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, and 40s. He's the only player to play in 5 decades. And I think we talked about. I think Tim McCarver played in 4 decades. I think he played
from
59 to 80.
He came up in 59 with the Cardinals, yep.
Yeah. This is also interesting, too. He suggested, other reports say he ordered, Harry Carey, who was the announcer for the White Sox at the time, to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game live during the 7th inning stretch. And Carey fought it, and Veeck made him do it, and now it's a thing. And I think most people think it's a Cubs thing, but Bill Veeck started that, which is kind of cool.
Wow. It is.
Yeah, and of course, his most noted for Disco Demolition Night. Do you remember scenes of that?
I do. You know, the White Sox were kind of a strange team back then, right? Because they also wore shorts during one of the double headers.
Yeah.
And they had those old throwback uniforms, but that was a mess, right?
Yeah.
They had to forfeit that game, didn't they?
It was in between double headers, I think. Yeah, and I think they had to forfeit the second game. And then lastly, what's interesting about Bill Veeck, he testified on the behalf of Curt Flood during his free agency court hearings. He didn't necessarily think Flood should be granted free agency at that time, but he's the one that basically came up with the plan of the 5-10 rule, the 5 years with the same team and 10 years of Major League service. It wasn't instituted in 71 or 72, but eventually that was a rule at one point. I'm not sure if it still is, but I remember that used to be the markers. 10 years in the league, 5 with
Okay.
one team,
Yeah.
and you get unrestricted free agency. So, yeah, I mean, Bill Veeck was a big part of baseball that's probably not as well known as maybe as it should. We had talked earlier that he was definitely an innovator, but some of the ideas were kind of crazy, like the Eddie Goodell and Disco Demolition Night. But some of the ideas were that we still use today, such as the Cubs singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and the free agency plan.
So a couple things to that, 'cause that's really interesting. And I kind of remember this, but the current owner of the Cardinals, because it's kind of all tied together, is Bill DeWitt Jr. And his dad actually, I think, co-owned with Bill Veeck. He owned the St. Louis Browns at that time. His dad, Bill DeWitt Sr.
Wow.
And
Okay.
Bill DeWitt Jr. was actually a bat boy during the Eddie Goodell game back in 1951. So it's kind of all tied together. And the other thing, Roger, it was great for Christy to bring up about Memorial Day. And this is some really good information that you have. And at some point, I got a book for Christmas that I'll have to have you read here. And I'm about halfway through it. It's called When Baseball Went to War. And it's really focusing on all of particularly the bigger name, a lot of the people you had talked about, athletes, baseball athletes at that time that was in World War II. So pretty good read, pretty good background. That's a really good job by you and Christy.
Yeah, it was fun doing the research on that. And then lastly, you want to talk about your baseball reference page find?
Yeah, so you gave me the idea, Baseball Reference. This website is just spectacular in terms of all the information that they have here. I mean, even some of the last names, they actually have pronunciations for some last names that are hard to pronounce. But I went through and I was looking at, for some reason, the Paul O'Neill, his webpage or his reference page, and it has here position, Paul O'Neill, position, right fielder, bats left, throws left, kicks left. And that's really a reference, if everybody remembers, back when he was with the Reds. And I think they were playing the Phillies, right?
Yeah.
And Steve Jones
Yeah.
hit the ball out into the outfield. He couldn't handle it. He bobbled it a couple times on the ground, and then he ended up kicking the ball. I think he kicked it right to first base.
Yeah, Todd Benziger. Yeah.
But I thought it was just interesting that they threw something in there just kind of on the side here, and just kind of funny.
Yeah, that was a nice find. And if you go to the baseball reference page and click on kicks left, it goes right to the video of him kicking the ball to the infield.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week, who is our guest next week? Looking at my calendar.
What do you mean? We got Pete Barth.
That's
owner
right.
of the Carpet Kings, his famous quote. Yeah. So hopefully he will be with us next Sunday.
Hopefully he'll remember.
Yeah. I'll remind him this week.
Yeah, then we're going to try to book Mike Alexander the week after that or thereabouts.
Yeah, we're looking for Mike on June 7th, and then hopefully, Raj, the next 3 weeks in June, we'll be talking about getting started in baseball, and hopefully somewhere we'll talk about having a Bush League draft, which is the reason why we have this podcast.
Yeah, that's the reason why we started the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good to have Bill on. Bill, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I just want to say you guys are really good, right? You guys are fair, you're entertaining, and it's relevant. So thanks for that, and keep doing what you guys are doing.
Bill, I appreciate the fact you said that we're fair, but wait till we get into the Bush League season. We are not planning to be fair at all. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. I think we're fair, and we'll dole out the punishment fairly across the board.
Well, as we see necessary in our own mind.
Right. Of course, we won't criticize each other. We'll just criticize the other 8.
Oh, not to our faces or on the air, but yeah, privately we will.
All right. So next week we got Pete Barth, and that should be our next 2 weeks should be good. So definitely look for us on our YouTube channel, The Bush League. All right, Jamie.
Yeah.
Enjoy your
All right.
Memorial Day tomorrow.
All right, everybody, stay safe out there. Take us out, Raj.